Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to introduce my good friend and great speaker, David Fitzgerald, author of Nailed.
Yeah, that's awesome. Damn, Skepticon. I missed you too. Just to be fair, I gotta say, I'm imagining all you naked right now too. Before we get started, I just want to get this out of the way and give a brief hello to all the Christians out there watching this on YouTube 6 months from now. Hi, hey Christians. Now, I know last year, that talk, it was upsetting. I know, I get that. But beloveds, believe me, you are going to love this speech. So let me ask you guys, if all the major world religions got together and had a contest to see which was the singularly greatest, most well-documented, sheer, blatant pile of unflinching bullshit, who would win? Who would win? Who would win? These are all good answers. But today, I want to make a heartfelt appeal on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. Now, what can we say about the Mormons? What can we say about the Mormons? And before we get started too much, Now, first of all, where are my Mormons in the house? I know you're out there. Can I hear it? Let me hear it. Ex-Mormons, that's what I mean. Yeah. I know you're there. We love you. Don't get me wrong. If you brought your cousins and your ex-wives out here, we love you guys too. We're just having a little talk. And here's the things we're talking about. Here's some fun facts about Mormonism. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints reports a worldwide membership of over 13 million. Every year, they send out over 50,000 Mormon missionaries across 162 countries, distributing materials in 93 languages. It claims to be the fourth largest religion in the United States and the sixth largest Christian denomination, which is interesting because most Christians don't think they're Christian at all. Now, although the Mormon Church does not disclose its finances, it's widely recognized as the wealthiest church per capita in America, with estimated church assets of at least 30 billion with a B, and probably much more. All good Mormons, to stay in good faith, have to tithe, that is, give 10% of their gross, not net income, which means that church, as of the mid-90s, annual tithing revenue was estimated between 4.25 and 5.3 billion, again, with a B, every year. If that wasn't fun enough, they also own a large amount of commercial investments through the Desert Management Corporation, which earns an estimated $600 million annually. I'm going to skip through most of this. Their enterprises range from an insurance company to stocks and bonds, this $172 million chain of radio stations, the seventh largest in the country. It's also one of the largest landowners in the nation, owning more than 150 farms and ranches, including America's largest cattle ranch shown here, with total assets somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 million acres, roughly the size of the state of Delaware. Now, incidentally, the church's religious buildings and property are considered expenses, not sources of revenue, even though they're huge sources of revenue. The church also channels significant funds into humanitarian work. It claims annual donations in the tens of millions of dollars and activities in 147 countries, which also happen to contribute to church growth. And like most religions, it claims to be the fastest growing religion in the world. Which leads us to a question. Where did this multi-billion-dollar tax-exempt corporation come from? Well, I'm going to breeze through this bit too, but never in America has there been so much religious mania packed into a small single time and place as upstate New York during the 1820s to the 1840s. In fact, the region became known as the Burned-Over District in honor of the way that so many crazy religious cults came and went there. It was run over by one over the other. We could spend if this was a mini-series, we could spend a whole first episode just on all these crazy guys in the pre-story. But we'll forget all that. And out of this completely religious foobar situation came this man, Joseph Smith. Now, in March 1826, a court in Bainbridge, New York, convicted 21-year-old Joseph Smith of being a disorderly person and an imposter. And what they meant by that is that Smith admitted at his trial to defrauding citizens by claiming to be a glass looker and using a magic seer stone to find hidden treasure or lost property, which was not an uncommon practice at the time. Now, for decades, Mormon scholars denied the existence of this court case, that it couldn't have happened because this was happening during the time that he was receiving the golden plate, so he couldn't have done it. And then in 1971, the court records were found in the basement of the county jail in Norwich, New York. Denied. Now, despite this, within 4 years, he was back in the local papers, all of which we still have, as a discoverer of the Golden Bible, the Book of Mormon. Smith had several advantages for the prophet biz. His grandfather actually claimed to have heavenly visions and even had them published. Young Joseph himself was charismatic, had a lively imagination, and despite limited education and poor grammar, he had a powerful voice and could transfix listeners with his conviction. Now, there just happened to be 8 Indian burial mounds near the Smith home when he was growing up. And when they were ransacked, they were found not to contain just merely bones, but advanced artifacts. And 2 particularly stupid groups took interest in this. The first were gold-seeking treasure seekers, and the other ones were religious crackpots who were looking for the lost tribes of Israel here in America. Now, Smith was lucky enough to belong to both groups. And interestingly enough, his mother told us at one time that as a youth, young Joseph, way before this, loved to weave theories about the mound builder Indians. He would talk about their dress, their mode of worship, the animals they rode, their cities, their buildings, their warfare, their religious worship. She said that he would do this as much ease, seemingly, as if he had spent his whole life with them. And so to make a very long, convoluted, and contradictory story short, one day, Joseph Smith announced that he had been visited. Dum, 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 dum. Announced that he had been visited 3 times by a white-skinned angel named Moroni. Native American angel. Yeah, I hear it. The angel told him of a book written upon gold plates which explained the origins of the Indians as well as the truths of the gospel. The gold plates were buried nearby in upstate New York, along with 2 magic stones, the Urim and the Thummim, that not to be confused with Uma Thurman, which I do sometimes, which would enable Smith himself to translate the books. So after a couple more visions, he found the buried treasure on the hill of Cumorah, the site of an ancient battlefield, and brought them home with him on September 21st, 1827, about 18 months after his conviction for fraud. He then set about translating the Golden Bible from Reformed Egyptian into English, old-timey King Jamesy Old Testament English. And lo and behold, the books turned out to be, well, let's read it from the official introduction to the Book of Mormon. This book was written by many ancient prophets by the spirit of prophecy and revelation. Their words written on golden plates were quoted and abridged by a prophet historian named Mormon. The record gives an account of 2 great civilizations. One came from Jerusalem in 600 BC and afterwards separated into 2 nations known as the Nephites and the Lamanites. The other came much earlier when the Lord confounded the tongues at the Tower of Babel. This group is known as the Jaredites. And after thousands of years, all were destroyed except the Lamanites, and they are the principal ancestors of the American Indians. Come on, you. We've got a story to tell here. It's not doing it. What do I do? Oh, there we go. There they go. Keep going. No, this is not a D&D game. This is really his story. Okay. Now, Smith was forced to refuse to show the plates to anybody because if anyone else saw them, they would instantly die. But the prophet had a problem. He was only semi-literate. He could read a little bit, but he could not write. So he needed someone better educated than he to take down his inspired dictation. Well, after a few choices, he finally found his neighbor, Martin Harris, who mortgaged his farm to help with the great work and moved in with the Smiths. You don't see the blanket in this picture here, but he actually, in this artist rendering, he actually sat down on one side of the blanket, hung across the kitchen. Smith sat on the other side with his translator stones, speaking at him from behind the curtain. Now, you have to understand, the blanket was there for Harris's safety because Joseph warned him if he tried to catch a glimpse of plates or looking at the prophet at work, he would be struck dead. Now, there's a wrinkle, because unfortunately, Mrs. Harris was not having any of this and was furious with her husband for mortgaging the farm. So when he excitedly brought over the first 116 plates of the great work to show his wife, she apparently hid them or possibly even burned them. And then she challenged Smith to just translate those pages again. Now, I gotta tell you something. That's about all I know about Lucy Harris, but I think I love her. Well, as you can imagine, this gave Joseph Smith a couple bad weeks, but fortunately, the prophecy prevailed, and he announced another revelation. He couldn't replicate the original, which, after all, could be in the devil's hands right now and corrupted hopelessly. But God, in his infinite wisdom, had seen all this pesky business ahead of time and provided a brand new set of smaller gold plates, the Plates of Nephi, which told basically the same story, only different in an abridged form. It was still pretty close. So translation resumed, and after several secretaries stepped in about 3 years or a few months, depending on who you ask, the Book of Mormon was translated, and all the gold plates were magically transported back to heaven by the angel Moroni, where apparently they remain to this day. Joseph Smith called this book, the Book of Mormon, the most correct book of any on earth, though oddly enough, it seems like the first edition doesn't seem like we have the first editions. They have embarrassing spelling and grammar errors. It also seems to have a lot in common with this book, Ethan Smith's View of the Hebrews, and other books like Solomon Spaulding's Manuscript Found, which also speculated that American Indians descended from ancient Israelites who migrated to the New World. The church grew rapidly and gained over 1,000 members in less than a year, though Smith wound up excommunicating all the men who had been his first followers and who had sworn that they too had seen the golden plates. First, there were the 3 witnesses, though all 3 told conflicting stories of what they had seen, and their stories grew more elaborate every time they told it. And when questioned, Martin Harris confessed, well, he didn't actually see the plates. He said, I didn't see them as I do that pencil case, yet I saw them with the eye of faith. I saw them just as distinctly as I see anything else around me, though at the time they were covered with a cloth. Incidentally, this same guy, Martin Harris, also said that he met Jesus one day in the shape of a deer and walked and talked with him for a few miles. He also said that the devil looked like a jackass with very smooth, short hair like a mouse. He prophesied that Palmyra, New York would be destroyed by 1836, and that by 1838 the Mormon church would be so big there would be no need for a president of the United States. And yet, for some reason, this all wasn't enough for Smith, and he felt the need to bring in 8 more witnesses to testify that they too saw and handled the plates and their strange inscriptions. Half were incidentally from his own family, and the other half were close friends. And after half of them had left the church, they gave more details. What they said was that Smith had first set them to continual prayer and other spiritual exercises, whatever the hell that means, and then assembled them in a room and produced a box, which he said contained the treasure. The lid was open, the witnesses peeped inside, and the box was empty. They said, Brother Joseph, we don't see the plates. And the prophet goes all Sam Singleton on their ass and says, O ye of little faith, how long will God bear this wicked and perverse generation? Down on your knees, brethren, every one of you, and pray God. He goes on for this for another 20 minutes or so. So they dropped to their knees and prayed for more than 2 hours with fanatical earnestness, direct quote, and afterwards, looking into the box, they were now persuaded that they saw the plates. Again, direct quote. The concrete proof thus established, the angel came and took the plates back to heaven, which is really too bad that the plates are so holy, because that would have been awesome proof for the unbelievers. But strangely enough, for every person that Joseph Smith baptized, there were a dozen who remembered his trial for fraud. And the church faced constant, vicious persecution. Smith was assaulted, beaten, and arrested many times. And I just found out this fun fact from an ex-Mormon friend of mine. As often as not, it was other Mormons who were beating his ass. For stealing their money, like when he put a Mormon bank together to issue Mormon money, and lost all their money, making lots of money, or stealing their wives. And so, with this persecution, he and his followers had to keep moving west to Ohio, to Missouri, to Illinois, but they couldn't escape their troubles, and Smith was finally killed by a mob while in jail in 1844, martyred just like Jesus. except for the fact he had a gun in his hand and shot and killed 2 guys on his way out. After the death of its prophet, the church fragmented. And in fact, today there are still splinter groups breaking off from the LDS. Anybody want to guess how many splinter groups of the LDS there are? 35? 40? 50? Okay, there's like, I think, maybe 8 major ones, and there are over 200 splinter groups. Some are just the size of one family. But most of the majority endured under the leadership of this guy, Brigham Young. Persecution, however, grew even worse until it was outright war between the United States and Mormons. Mobs attacked Mormon families, LDS buildings were burned, attacks and counterattacks escalated until at one point both sides were using artillery. Finally, the Mormons gave up and fled westward for over a year until they saw that the promised land that Brigham Young had taken them to, yes, the promised land of Utah. And the rest is history. So enough of the history lesson. Let's get to the good stuff in this talk. What puts them in a league of their own is their freaky beliefs. Because frankly, Mormonism is so chock full of so mondo bizarro, 19th century, sweetly racist beliefs that we could pick any of these crackpot notions and spend all day talking about them. But we're just going to zip through them all. So what's the first crazy-ass Mormon belief that everybody knows about and loves? Yes, polygamy! That's right. And what's the thing? Now, at first, I had to say, at first glance, it may sound promising. Sure. But let's think about something. Like in real life, it isn't so pretty at all. In fact, according to my friend Andrea Moore Emmett, who's an ex-Mormon and wrote an excellent book called God's Brothel, it is downright scary. And after seeing that, I couldn't watch Big Love because there's nothing cute about Mormonism as it's practiced today. It's extremely creepy, scary. Yeah. Nothing. It was horrifying. Now, it's difficult to say when the beloved doctrine of polygamy started exactly. And the reason it's hard to say is because at first it was practiced in secret and actively denied. In fact, it seems like at first the only ones who knew about it were his new wives-to-be, who were often married to other men. It's also hard to say just how many wives he had, though it appears to be close to 50. This girl here, Mary Elizabeth Rollins Leitner, claimed that Smith secretly told her in 1831, when she was 12, that God had chosen her to be the first one he commanded Joseph to take as a plural wife. It turns out she wasn't the first, but she did become his 9th wife at age 23. Now, rumors of Mormon polygamy began to become public, enough to be denied in Mormon publications, and enough to piss off other Mormon witnesses, like the 3 witnesses who left the church because of it. Until 1843, when Smith had a revelation. Now, by the way, just like Muhammad, Smith received incredibly convenient divine revelations at short notice, especially, just like Muhammad, when he had a new girl that he wanted to take as another wife. Now, after this revelation was written, and you can still read it in Doctrines and Covenants, he presented it to his wife, Emma, who said she didn't believe a word of it and appeared very rebellious, even though it mentions her by name repeatedly. According to this thing, and again, you can still find it in every edition of Doctrine and Covenant, Doctrine 132, it's not optional at all. Christ commanded the practice of polygamy as a new and everlasting covenant and declared that anyone who rejects the new practice will suffer damnation and not be permitted to enter into my glory. He also said that the first wife's consent should be sought before a man married another wife, but if she did not consent to the plural marriage, that Christ would destroy the first wife, and that the husband is exempt from ever asking her consent in the future. Now, by the way, official polygamy this everlasting covenant lasted until 1890, when the church was forced to literally make this change as a condition for statehood for Utah. Surprise! A new revelation reversed the whole thing. But don't worry, in the afterlife, men are still allowed to get more wives. What's our next freaky belief? Oh yeah, that's good too. The sacred underwear. Here's a fun fact. The sacred symbols that are in there are Masonic symbols, and initially were cut into the garment with a knife so deep it would leave a scar until there were too many protests from the Mormon women. Racist dogma. Yeah. Blacks were not allowed into the priesthood until God changed his mind about it in 1978. Why weren't they allowed to become priests before them? Because they were cursed with black skin for their pre-existent spirit, when they were pre-existent spirit children in heaven. You don't have to take my word for it. We got these two chodes here who will tell you the same thing. The Negro here is evidently receiving the reward he merits. This tool says Negroes are not equal with other races. It's the Lord's doing, not nothing we have to say about it. And it's not just blacks. He prophesied that the red men, in just a few generations, would also become white, delightsome, and just. And he encouraged his followers to take Indian wives. Women are still out of luck. They are still free to enjoy the privilege of being wife and mother. Here's another fun fact here. How many heavens are in Mormonism? There's 3 of them, yeah. And here's a simple chart to tell us how to get there. Well, actually, all you really need to know is we're all on this path here. That's the one, going straight there. Yes, we are. I'll jump to the fact, the way it works is through eternal progression. Because as you know, God is an exalted man. He was once just a good Mormon. Now he's God. Hey, as man is, God once was. As God is, man may become. The first transhumanist movement were the Mormons. This is true. And here's, like I say, a simple chart to figure it out, how eternal progression works. Let's see. So in the middle here, that's planet Kolob, which I've recently found out is in the Tropic of Cancer in the Kokabeum galaxy. Let's see. That's where God lives with his wives and sons, Jesus and Lucifer. And when you become a god, you'll create your own universe to rule with your family, unless your sons want to go and create their own universe. The girl's going to stay at home, but the boys can go off and make a universe. What else we got? Blood atonement. Why does Utah still execute people by firing squad? Because of the doctrine that sin cannot be forgiven without the shedding of blood. Now, where did they get such a friggin' crazy-ass idea as that? Right, the New Testament. Sorry, I forgot. God loves blood. Loves blood. So wait a minute. All right, that's all well and good enough. But what about all those people who died before Joseph Smith started Mormonism? No problem, they've got it figured out. This is why they have got a gigantic genealogical database in a huge repository in Utah. And honestly, that's probably the best thing the Mormon Church has ever given us, outside of Donnie and Marie, maybe. Every week at special ceremonies in Mormon temples, Mormons are given a certain quota of names of the departed to pray into their church so they can become Mormons too. Now, you'd think that would be awesome, but the American Jewish community was incensed when it discovered that the Mormons had required Nazi final solution records and were industriously baptizing the murdered Jews of World War II. They also were not happy that Adolf Hitler was also baptized as a Mormon. See you in heaven! Yay! That's going to be fun. All right, but wait, there's more. More bonus freakery. In the temple, there are temple rituals. We can't know about them because they are so sacred, they're not shown to outsiders. But in the last 100 years, people have broken it, found it, filmed it, documented it, and we've discovered that, hey, surprise, they've rife with Masonic costumes, symbols, and handshakes. Stolen completely from them. All right, bear in mind, this is very scary now, and I hesitate to even show it to you, but yeah, if Twilight wasn't heinous enough, UCLA film and religion professor Angela Alice did a point-by-point comparison of how Mormon beliefs and culture, influence, and imagery run through the Twilight saga, right down to the fact about how much housekeeping that heroine Bella is always doing. Here we go. Not the Girl Scouts, but the Boy Scouts. Isn't it weird that Boy Scouts have to believe in a God, any God, they don't even care which God it is, and they can't be gay? Girl Scouts seem to be fine without any of that. But maybe it's because the Mormon Church is a major sponsor of the Boy Scouts of America. Know who's number 2? The Roman Catholic Church. So talk about strange bedfellows. All right, but there's even more. Do you know where this is? It's Independence, Missouri, right here in Missouri. Do you know what it is? It's the Garden of Eden, motherfuckers, right there. Right there. In Independence, Missouri, just 3 hours that away. Not only that, That is ground zero, my friends, where Jesus is going to come down with the nation of Israel and start the city of Zion at the second coming. And unfortunately, the Mormons lost the property rights to it to a splinter group of Mormonism, so they don't own the ground zero for Jesus anymore. Oh, didn't see that coming. All right, the three Nephites. I only found out this from my good friend Steve Thorson, who's an ex-Mormon. The three Nephites. When Jesus went into the New World, he chose 12 more apostles, 3 of whom are still alive today, helping Mormons secretly with their superpowers. That is good television. Why do we not see this on TV? I would watch that show. All right, brace yourself, because this one is super freaky. Guess who this is? It's Bigfoot, that's right. But according to some Mormons, this is not official doctrine, but there are Mormons out who believe it. If this is Adam and Eve's son Cain, who is alive and well, wandering the earth, wearing no clothing but covered by hair. How do they know this? Because Mormon apostle David W. Patton encountered him once and spoke to him about it. All right. That's good stuff. All right, but here is my favorite topic of Mormonism. It's Mormon archaeology. Now, I don't think I really have to spend too much time arguing to you guys that Mormon archaeology is a complete oxymoron, but just in case there's any doubt, here is just a few of the chains of evidence to show it. Let's just start with DNA. Okay, DNA shows that Native Americans and Polynesians came from Asia. They are not related to the ancient Hebrews. We can trace this through linguistics as well, just by observing how words change from Asia through Polynesia, even though the Book of Mormon has them coming exactly the opposite way. In fact, if you go to the Mormon Polynesian Center in Hawaii, they have a great film showing you this Thor Heyerdahl Kon-Tiki scenario where they leave from South America and go off into the lost tribe of who's those guys that started with S out in Polynesia? The Samoans, lost tribe of Israel. Another fun fact. Here we go. And another thing that linguistics shows is that the ancient Americans had no words for things like chariot, swords, coin, silk, etc. Botany, flora. Smith assumed that the ancient Americans had the exact same kind of the agriculture that he had in upstate New York. So he had them growing wheat, barley, corn, flax, planting vineyards, understanding the symbolism of the olives and trees. Well, and he did get corn right. He did get corn. But the other major crops that are actually in the New World has no idea at all. And incidentally, we still have numerous cases where these crops have been preserved in archaeological sites, and they're easily identifiable. So if they were even growing these for just a few decades, let alone thousands of years that the Book of Mormon says they are, every soil sample taken in Central America or America should show traces of these things, because pollen is one of the most indestructible natural objects known. Zoology. Smith populated the Book of Mormon world with elephants, donkeys, cows, oxen, and horses. Now, remains of extinct mammoths, which had died out 10,000 plus years before, had been discovered just recently. So it would have seemed more plausible in the 1830s that the ancient Indians would have domesticated elephants. But the rural New Yorkers back then had no way to know that although horses originated in North America 7 million years ago, they and all the American species of elephant were extinct thousands of years before biblical times. And this is fun. Some Mormon apologists have tried to suggest that, well, when Smith translated the word for deer, a horse, he really meant deer, and when oxen, he really meant buffalo. So was he such a big dumbass that he didn't know the difference between those two things? But what's more is, archaeologically, we know there were no horse-drawn anything in Central America, South America, North America. The closest they got was llamas, and they weren't draft animals either. And there's absolutely no evidence of the domestication of animals, other animals, bridges, roads, stables, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is doubly ironic because iron and steel are mentioned in many places in the Book of Mormon. So he has his ancient Jaredites making steel swords in 2500 BC, or to put it another way, more than a millennium before iron making, let alone steel making, came to Mesopotamia. We have evidence for copper, silver, and zinc mines and smelters in pre-Columbian America, but we've never found any trace of iron or steel mills there. And Frank Zindler says this wonderfully. He says, if millions and millions of people made and used weapons and tools of steel for a period spanning more than 3 millennia, Not only should archaeologists find plentiful remains of all these things, swords, chariot axles, anvils, sickles, and many other iron-based artifacts, they should also be able to find the remains of steel mills all over the territory covered by his cast of characters. It's perfectly conceivable you might lose a steel sword, but how in hell do you lose a steel mill? Love, Frank. Here's one more thing. Textiles. Ancient Mexicans were weaving coffin fabrics by the year 5000 BC, but not only does the Book of Mormon not mention cotton, he has many of his characters wearing flax or even silk, some as old as 600 BC. But since silk was a trade secret in China until the 6th century, he is about 1,200 years too early. And then there's numismatics. The Book of Mormon describes lots of ancient coins, so let's take a look at them. Oh, that's right. That's right. They've never found them because, as it turns out, the ancient Lamanite money economy was a bullshit economy based on bullshit. Although the ancient Americans had gold and silver in abundance, they never made coins. They never evolved a money economy. They used jade beads, obsidian blades, cacao beans as mediums of exchange. But this didn't stop him from inventing oodles of Nephite money, none of which have ever been discovered. But interestingly enough, if you go to Book of Mormon websites, you can see pictures of these that are computer simulated. But they don't say they're computer simulated. They just say, this is what they look like, you know. Nice, yeah, it's nice. So then we've got archaeology. In fact, let's not waste any time. Let's just do archaeology, history, sociology, anthropology. Since no trace of evidence could be found of any of this in upstate New York or out of in-state New York or anywhere in America, Mormons have tended to start looking in Central America for traces of that. And in fact, to this date, not a single shred of evidence has turned up that would back up the theory that the Book of Mormon took place in Central America. And in fact, Michael D. Coe, Yale archaeologist, I couldn't say it better than he says it here. There is not a whit of evidence that the Nephites ever existed. The whole enterprise is complete rot, root, and branch. It's so racist, it hurts. It falls right into the 19th century American idea that only a white man could have built cities and temples. The American Indians didn't have the brains or the wherewithal to create their own civilizations. So to these jokers in the 1820s, the Red Indians may seem like they were all alike, but needless to say, they were never united in one or two great nations. So crazy. All right. Now we get it ugly. The skeletons in the Mormon closet. The Mountain Meadows Massacre. On 9/11, 1857, a local Mormon militia disguised itself as Paiute Indians and with a contingent of Paiutes attacked a wagon train of Arkansas immigrants passing through Mountain Meadows, Utah territory. The train had the bad fortune of passing through the territory during a Mormon rebellion, but the motive for the attacks are disputed. What's not disputed is that the immigrants fought back, circled the wagons, and a siege ensued. When the Mormons discovered that they'd been identified by the immigrants, they induced them to surrender and to give up their weapons. Then, after escorting them out of the area, the militiamen and their tribesmen auxiliaries executed the unarmed immigrants. All of the party, about 120 men, women, and children, were killed, except for 17 children under the ages of 8. The surviving children were distributed to local Mormon families to raise, and the victims' possessions were auctioned off at the Cedar City LDS tithing office. Investigations were interrupted by the U.S. Civil War, and they resulted in 9 indictments, but only one, this guy here, John D. Lee, Brigham's young adopted son, interestingly enough, was tried in a court of law, and after 2 trials, he was convicted, and in March 23, 1877, a firing squad executed him at the massacre site. Yeah, there's not too many good ways to put a comedic spin on all that, so let's move on to some other funny stuff here. Joseph Smith and Brigham Young on science. Here's some little-known facts. This is from the Mormon Young Ladies Mutual Improvement Association of Zion's Young Woman's Journal. He started out by saying, nearly all of the great discoveries of men in the last half-century have in one way or another, directly or indirectly, contributed to prove Joseph Smith to be a prophet. As far back as 1837, he said that the moon was inhabited by men and women the same as this earth. And they lived to a greater age than we do. They lived generally to the age of 1,000 years. He described the men as averaging near 6 feet in height, dressing quite uniform in something near the Quaker style. And it goes on, he said he was told that he'd be preaching the gospel to the inhabitants of the islands of the sea and the inhabitants of the moon, even the very planet you behold with your very eyes. And I've got to go back for 1 minute because I love this opening paragraph. He says, astronomers and philosophers have from time almost immemorial until very recently asserted that the moon was uninhabited, that it had no atmosphere, etc. But recent discoveries through the means of powerful telescopes have given scientists a doubt or two on the old theory. Scientists and their bullshit, yeah. Set him straight, Brigham Young. He doesn't stop at the moon. No, in a sermon he delivered in the Tabernacle in Salt Lake City, he said, who can tell us of the inhabitants of this little planet that shines even on the moon? When you inquire about the inhabitants of that sphere, you'll find that most are ignorant as that as they are to their fellows. So it is with the inhabitants of the sun. Do you think the sun is inhabited? I rather think it is. Do you think there is any life there? No question of it. It was not made in vain. In fact, it was made to give light to those that dwell upon it and to other planets. And so will this earth when it is celestialized. Throughout early Mormon doctrines, we see this confusion between what's a planet and what's a star, because they keep going back and forth saying Kolob is a planet or a star. And this guy, Brigham Young, is actually saying that planets are just baby stars that haven't been celestialized by Jesus yet. Okay. Here, this bit I love, because one particular Achilles heel that seems unique to Mormonism is their vulnerability to archaeological fraud. In general, mainstream Christians don't all get attached to relics, so when hoaxes like the Shroud of Turin or the ossuary of St. James turn out to be fakes, and they always do, it's not necessarily a deal killer for the faithful. But what makes Mormon doctrine so special is that Joseph Smith never realized that archaeologists were already beginning to read Egyptian, so he continues to put smoking guns in his mouth throughout his career. Let's look. These are the Kinderhook plates. In 1843, 6 brass bell-shaped plates were found, discovered in a burial mound in Kinderhook, Illinois, with a small number of human bones, and given to Joseph Smith, who translated a portion of them. I've translated a portion of them, and find that they contain the history of the person whom they were found. He was a descendant of Ham through the loins of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he received his kingdom from the ruler of heaven and earth. Well, despite an Illinois man coming forward a little while later and admitting that the plates were forgeries created by himself and 2 other men to make fun of Joseph Smith, the church continued to assert that they were genuine. Mysteriously enough, though, the actual plates disappeared, and for many years, all 6 plates remained lost until 1962, when one of them was recovered. There it is. Welby W. Ricks, the president of the BYU Archaeological Society, was delighted. He invited all the world to investigate the truth of the Kinderhook plates. Poor Welby. In 1980, permission was granted to make some very sophisticated electronic and chemical analysis of the plate, which verified that, yes, it is indeed one of the original Kinderhook plate, and yes, it is pure bullshit. 19th century fake. This gets even better. The Book of Abraham. One of the cornerstones of Mormon scripture is the Book of Abraham. It's in the Pearl of Great Price. In 1835, Joseph Smith obtained some Egyptian papyri along with several mummies. From these Egyptian writings, Smith claimed to translate one of the cornerstones of Mormon scripture, the Book of Abraham, which he said was the writing of Abraham when he lived in Egypt, called the Book of Abraham, written by his own hand on papyrus. Still in the introduction to the book today. The original Egyptian text was lost for many years and believed to have been destroyed in the Great Fire of Chicago, Great Chicago Fire of 1871. But unfortunately for the church, it turned up again in 1967, complete with Joseph Smith's handwritten notes on it. Needless to say, Egyptologists immediately identified it as a common Egyptian funerary manual, the Book of Breathings, collections of spells and incantations to help the deceased. It doesn't contain any information about Abraham or his religion, but it names the corpse of and his mother as directions to bury them. And yet, this is still a cornerstone of Mormon scripture, and it even has pictures from the book that are with his interpretations of them, which is hilarious. All right, one last big thing, the Hoffman affair. Now, during the 1980s, the LDS Church was rocked by scandals that, frankly, I am surprised they're still around after it. But then again, we got the Catholic Church still around too, so. In the early 80s, Mark William Hoffman, a 6th-generation Mormon, started discovering a flood of early Mormon documents, one after another. Some the church publicized, and others they bought secretly and tucked away and didn't publicize. The first was the Anthon transcript, which Hoffman claimed was to be found stuck in the pages of a 17th century Smith family Bible, and it appeared to be an original chart written by Joseph Smith himself of these Reformed Egyptian characters. Let's get a closer look at the Reformed Egyptian characters. Yeah, that's what they are. The church went gaga over it and paid over $20,000 for it. Hoffman immediately dropped out of school and became a full-time professional rare book dealer. And he claimed to have an entire network of tipsters and tracked down modern descendants of early Mormons. And soon he had this reputation for discovering previously unknown documents with great historical significance, especially for the Mormon Church. In 1981, he showed up at LDS headquarters and tried to sell a letter to the chief archivist of the Latter-day Saint Church. The letter claimed that Joseph Smith's son, not Brigham Young, had been selected by Joseph Smith to be his successor. Now, one of the splits we had right at the beginning was this very church. Brigham Young went one way. The people who said that no, Joseph Smith Jr. should be the new prophet went off the other way. They're the Missouri-based Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They'd always maintained that, yeah, Joseph Smith's line was the real successors, but they never had written proof. So when the church library balked at the price, Hoffman went over to them. This set over a scramble to acquire the letter. He finally traded it to the Utah church for over $20,000 in antiquities so they could bury it. And then he turned around and leaked the news to the New York Times. So the LDS was forced to pay for it, give it up, and hand it over to the Reformed Church. Fun game. And he continued this fun and very lucrative game over and over during the early 80s, producing new discoveries and playing the anxious Mormon church officials like a fiddle. Nobody's sure just how many documents he sold them, but because they kept most of the purchases hushed up. But they include a letter from his mother, a letter from two of the eyewitnesses giving different accounts of their vision, an original contact for the first edition of the Book of Mormon, 2 pages of the original Book of Mormon manuscript, and most interestingly, the Salamander letter, which claimed that Smith had been treasure hunting and practicing black magic, and that a white salamander, not an angel, had appeared to him in his vision. As in other cases, Hoffman sold it secretly to high-ranking church officials for thousands of dollars, gave his word that no one else had a copy, and as soon as it was buried, leaked its existence to the press. So that the church was forced to release the letter to scholars for study, despite denying its existence or that they had it in their possession. Now, you would love this guy, except what ratchets the story up is that as all these documents were forgeries created by him, every single one of them. And when his scheme began to unravel, he went from forger to murderer. He killed 2 people with homemade bombs before the 3rd bomb went off in his car, seriously injuring him and wrecking his forging arm in jail, by the way. They didn't just show that the Mormon leaders were easy to dupe, but they were eager and desperate to spend thousands of dollars to cover up what they thought was genuine proof that their religion was a fraud. Yeah, that's special. All right, well, finally some good news. Come on, let's get to the good news. Oh, yeah, that's him. Ish. He did that thing. Bam. Some good news about Mormonism. It is very possible that the Mormon Church has maxed out. At one time, it claimed to be adding 1 million members every 3 years, but nowadays, during the age of the internet and fact-checking, the rate of growth is primarily due to children born into Mormon families. New converts are down in recent decades, and just skip through this. Well, actually, a huge portion of the newly converted saints, perhaps as many as 50% in some areas, will leave the church at some point. And there are millions of disenfranchised generational Mormons who don't describe themselves as Mormons anymore so much as Jack Mormons or fringe Mormons, or as Brian Dalton, Mr. Deity, calls them, former Mormons or Formans. They're categorized as inactive on the church census. And a 2005 Salt Lake City Tribune article cited research saying that the church's active church-going membership may only be 4 million, not 13 million, which means there are over twice as many ex-Mormons as there are active Mormons. And that is good news. And I could talk more about the changes in even existing Mormonism. There's New Order Mormons who are humanistic Mormons, who are almost atheist Mormons, if you will. There's affirmation, there's gay Mormons, and these people are all still Mormons, and yet they're gay. It's a kind of one of those black Republican, Christian heavy metal dichotomies that happens. But that's all I've got except for this one bit right here. I'll end on that note. And next year, I apologize for not having the book this year. Next year, we'll have the Complete Heretic's Guide to Western Religion Mormonism, the book. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But in the meantime, there is a book you could buy. It's right out there. It's by my very good friend, Kilpatrick. How many science fiction fans are in the audience? Science fiction? Fantasy? Fantasy fans? Steampunk fans? Zombie fans? Erotica fans? That's all in there. It's all in there. It's all in there. I would love it. The more books you buy this, the more time I have to write books like that. So thank you very, very, very much. I love you, Skepticon.